Greetings and
Great.
welcome to the How's Biz podcast. I'm your host, Gary Marsh. This is, of course, sponsored by NAI Global. Today's guest is Kelly Disser with NAI Hiffman in the Chicago area. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Nice to be here, and we're into the new year. We'll jump in with your history of how you got to be a #1 producer with the NAI Global platform. That's part of the reason why you're a guest on today's show. You're one of the top 10 producers in 2022. So we always like to say congratulations on that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 20 years ago that you started with Duke Realty Corporation.
Yeah, it's time flies, but that sounds about right. It actually, I had a couple of years there with Duke as an intern prior to my, I guess, official start after I graduated from Butler. But yeah, it's been about 20 years, and I've been fortunate to have a couple of I think invaluable work experiences, and fortunate to have met some people, some great people along the way that helped. I think with my background and professional career that helped me to get to where I'm at today.
I would think having worked for one of the nation's largest developers, that would give you a big leg up on transitioning to brokerage. But before we jump into that, let's talk about your early career with Duke. Did you intern? Are you from the Chicago area, and did you intern in their Chicago office or someplace else?
So I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I worked out of the Duke Indianapolis office,
Oh, the
which was
headquarters.
their headquarters. And then in addition to the headquarters, the industrial team officed out of Park 100, which was the business park that they developed, going back into the probably even 80s and 90s, which they've since sold off a number of those properties, and obviously they were just acquired. But we officed out of Park 100 on the northwest side of town, and I was fortunate enough to be hired. I was still in college playing football at Butler University, and I got a summer internship as a property management intern in their office group under a gentleman named Phil Armstrong. The next summer I came back, they invited me back to be a property management intern on the industrial side of things. And I worked with Jay Archer, Charlie Padell, David Fronick, and a great group of people that then hired me full time out of after I got my degree from Butler. I started in January of 2003 as a full-time employee at Duke Realty.
When did you get to Chicago?
May 1st of 2008.
Okay, so you started in Indy and then you moved to Chicago. What sort of spurred that transition, and had you left Duke by then?
So I left Duke, I want to say in 2006 or 2007. Had a great career and a great team at Duke. It was just it ended up I was recruited to go down to work in Dallas by a company called the Tabani Group, which was a family office, and I had grown up with that family. I played football with the oldest son, Zishan, and he and I kept in touch through college and after college, and he knew what I was doing at Duke, and they asked me to come down to Dallas to work with them for a couple of years. So I did that, and actually I met my wife, my now current wife, just before I moved to Dallas, and we got engaged. And long story short, I would say my wife Audra is probably the reason that I ended up in Chicago. She was living in Chicago at the time, and I ended up moving up here.
Well, I understand that you started early with the concept of a happy wife is a happy life.
Very much so.
Yep, I get it. So good for you. Well, it wasn't planned, but since you mentioned football, I wanted to ask you about that. First of all, what position did you play?
So I played quarterback kind of growing up and through high school. I was recruited to play quarterback in college. at Butler, ultimately, which is where I went to go play, to the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy, and then recruited to play defensive back or receiver at a couple of, I guess, regional Big Ten schools. Took trips down to IU, Purdue, and then a couple of MAC schools, Ball State, Bowling Green, and I think a couple of others, but I went to Butler because I wanted to play quarterback. And long story short, I made a decision to change positions to play cornerback before 2-a-days were over, because I knew I could come in and play immediately, and I wanted to play. I wasn't accustomed to being second string on the depth chart, so I made a decision to switch positions. I played cornerback my freshman year. Sophomore year, I took a break my junior year, and then I came back my senior year and played a 5th year as a receiver on the football team.
Oh, wow. Okay, good for you. Well, it's not uncommon, as you know, for outstanding quarterback athletes in high school to end up in a different spot in a bigger league. But the fact that you played a high-level collegiate sport reminds me about the history, really, of successful college athletes and pro athletes as well that become really great in the commercial real estate business, especially brokerage. I have my own theories about that, namely that you're willing to put in the hard work and train. I always say I think you hate to lose more than you love to win. So you're competitive, because this is a very competitive business, as you know.
Yep.
Do you agree, Kelly? And is there anything else to add to that concept? Because I think it's a great place for companies to recruit.
It absolutely is. And, my partner here at the office, Mike Freitag, was a college hockey player. Bill Byrne, who joined us here within the past year, played football as well. I don't believe he played in college, but definitely through high school. But I definitely think there's something to that. Just the nature of the hard work, the hours, hating to lose, like you say, maybe even more than loving to win. But, it's a extremely competitive business. It's an extremely competitive industry. And, one thing that I've learned and lived through is that it's a long time coming. And actually, I kind of had come to regret my decision to switch positions. I looking back on it, sticking that out at quarterback and biding my time, I probably would have been starting by about the 5th or 6th game into my freshman season. The one guy who I had not yet beaten out through 2-a-days ended up breaking his ankle. So that actually was a kind of an invaluable lesson in being patient. And I'm probably not a very patient person by nature, but that in itself, I think, really was one of the things that I could lean on, because making a transition from Duke or from the Tabani group and the type of roles that I was in, they gave me tremendous experience, and I understand I think real estate development, construction, and the process, and a lot of the financial elements of a development or of a complex real estate transaction in a way that a vast majority of my peers do not. And it's just purely from experience. But to get to the point where you can utilize that knowledge, just because you have that knowledge in brokerage, you don't just come in and have the ability to offer that up to your clients. It takes years to develop the relationships that then give you the platform to be able to add that type of value to your clients. And I think that having had some of those experiences where I was less than patient were critical in me taking the time and having the patience to be persistent to get to where we're at here today.
Understood, and well said, and certainly life's lessons. That's what part of the maturing and development process is for all of us, even when we're in our careers. And I can appreciate your comment on the injury prone nature of football. I mean, here in the Northern California area where I live, I'm a San Francisco 49er fan, of course, and we've got Mr. Irrelevant, our quarterback, number 3 on the depth chart, is taking us to the playoffs. And so, we could always look back and say, woulda, shoulda, coulda. But you're
Yep.
also another example. We've said it here on the podcast before of it takes a long time to become an overnight sensation. And you're another living, breathing example of it, where you put what you've learned over time together, and all of a sudden, quote unquote, you're a top producer with NAI Global, and out of 5,000 or so professionals. That's quite an accomplishment. So again, congratulations to you, Kelly.
Thank you.
After you did talk about leaving the family office in Dallas and getting up to the Chicago marketplace. So when did you make the leap into brokerage, and have you always been with NAI Hiffman?
As a broker, yes. So I moved to Chicago in April of 2008. Through my first, I guess I'd say 6 years, because I really started, I think I consider professional experience with a couple of those really excellent internships that I had with Duke. But the first 6 years of my professional life, if you think back to where the economy was in those days, we were coming out of the tech boom, and the economy, the industrial market had been pretty strong. I moved up to Chicago, and before I had made the move, I had not yet secured my next career move. So I moved to Chicago, and I was interviewing with a number of firms. Due to the fact that I had 4 or 5 great years of asset management and development experience with Duke. I had worked in the investment world with the Tabani Group. Brokerage was really, if you look at the 3, I've heard it compared to, and the analogy of a 3-legged stool: brokerage, property management, asset management, and investments. That was really the one aspect of the industrial real estate business I had not yet explored. So, I think by curiosity, that was the sector that I focused on. I knew how hard that I would work to do what was necessary. I do think that I had underestimated just truly how hard and how competitive that this market is. So combine that with where the economy was in early 2008 and where it was going. I quickly found out the hard way what being a broker in the midst of a downturn, or even worse than that, the GFC, what that felt like, and really had to figure out a way to survive through that time period. And it's I think starting in brokerage, even in good times, is challenging. So really it enabled me to focus on my work ethic, focus on networking. I understood the business. I understood the financial end of the business. When I moved to Chicago, I really did not know anybody. I had one college teammate and a friend of mine that I guess I would consider potentially a client. But outside of that, I really I hit the pavement and I hit the phones, and I ended up meeting a lot of really good people and developing a lot of important relationships along the way.
There must have been some maybe sleepless nights where you're questioning whether or not this was a good idea.
The funny story, and I remember this day, and I have this vision and this memory like burned into my brain. The first day I walked into our office building, and we're still actually in the same building today. I remember walking into our lobby on the first floor, and I knew where we were going. At that time, we were on the 6th floor, but I stopped and I looked at the directory to see NAI Hiffman, Suite 600, and it was at that moment in time it hit me. You're in a new city, you don't know anybody, you've never you don't know the brokerage business, and you don't know when your next check is coming. So you better get to work. But yeah, I mean, and rather than, thinking maybe I made the wrong decision or maybe it wasn't a good idea, I mean, in my mind, there was no other option but to make it work. And, rather, I didn't have a fallback plan. My wife was great. She was supportive. She was working at the time. We now have three beautiful kids, and fortunately she has a full-time job, kind of running them around and taking care of everything for them during the day when I'm at work. But without her help, particularly in those early days, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, and I know that, and share that with Audra. So it's kind of cool that I kind of view this as we've done it together. But I think partially because of the athletic background, the situation at Butler, I just viewed this as I had no choice but to make it work, figure it out and work until, I had explored every possible, alternative, and made every call that I could. And, there definitely been some ups and downs along the way, but, I think if you're persistent and you work, you put your mind to it, I mean, I think, you can accomplish anything.
No, agreed. And touche to you and your wife for doing it together. But going back to your athletic background, Kelly, and I have my own self as a young man, a high level athletic background too. So the confidence that you have as an athlete, when you step on the field, you expect to win. You expect to beat your opponent, whoever that is, one-on-one or whatever. And so that, I'm sure that played into your success. So again, it's a good personal story, and I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
You're part of a team in the Chicagoland marketplace, and you mentioned a couple of the guys already. How big is the team? Is it a 3-person, 4-person? You probably also have some corporate marketing support, but since there are so many teams these days, and it is a good way to succeed in this business, how do you divide responsibilities among your teammates?
So I had mentioned Mike and Bill, and Karen Kurian is our administrative assistant and kind of holds everything together for us. We all do a little bit of everything. And Mike, actually, I'm very proud of this, but he actually just had qualified to become a shareholder here at our firm. So I'm very proud of him and of our team for accomplishing that. But so we all do a little bit of everything, but I do think we try to allow our strengths of each person to be kind of the focal point of what most of their hours during the week go toward. I think my strengths are in in business development and in executing the transactions and some of the underwriting and some of the processes that go into some of our more complicated development deals. Mike's, he's extremely organized, and he understands a lot of the principles of what we do. So he handles a lot of our prospecting reports and runs point on a lot of our proposals that we put out for various buildings or the various tenants or users of ours that are looking at leasing or buying a building. And Bill right now is kind of drinking from a fire hose, doing a little bit of everything. And I think that's part of the reason why it's, in my opinion, hard to establish yourself in this business, is there are so many different things that a good broker has to do and has to understand. And it just takes time and experience to build that base of knowledge to where you can function and be able to add value to your clients. But early on with Mike, I think contrary to what I've seen as a model that a lot of the industry uses, where a senior broker has a younger team member that he maybe looks to them to support their business development or their calling for new business. And Mike ended up helping me with a lot of transactions that I was working on, and I think it helped give him a greater breadth of experience and a deeper understanding of what we were doing and why we were doing certain things, so we could understand some of the process in a more detailed way than just focusing on a particular task. And I think that his success and his production is indicative of that broader and deeper understanding. So we do try to allocate toward our strengths. I mean, at the end of the day, as I've shared with Mike and Bill, the goal we have to create synergies. We have to all benefit from working together, and the fact that 1 + 1 has to equal 3. If not for that, then any of those guys could choose to work independently. But I think that our results over the past couple of years speak for themselves, in the fact that we're together stronger as a team than we might be individually.
That's the way it ought to be, teamwork. Do you guys do more landlord work or tenant work, a combination thereof? I mean, you must be involved in development deals given your background.
We do. We typically, our team will execute probably on average 2 or 3 development deals a year, and that includes sourcing the land, potentially assembling multiple parcels, and then going through the construction process, sometimes even prior to that, helping our clients through the entitlement process, and then of course leasing the building when it is complete. But as far as the breakdown, it's probably close, I'd say 45 to 55% tenant side to landlord side. The revenues are a little bit further skewed than that, probably 65-35. We do try to maintain a close balance. I think we try to get close to 50-50, because I have found that the listing business, the landlord business, does tend to sometimes drive our tenant rep business and leads to new relationships as well on the tenant side.
That makes sense. When I was younger and first started working in Silicon Valley with a brokerage firm, they didn't believe in the tenant rep exclusive model, because they felt the companies that did exclusively tenant rep didn't understand the market, didn't have access to the comps, and that gave them a fundamental knowledge that allowed them to do better tenant representation work too. So you might agree to that theory.
I absolutely do. I think it just helps you, to have a better understanding of what is going on in the market, what different clients' perspectives are. We do a lot of work with Prologis and with Link, 2 of the largest landlords on the industrial side here in the United States and also globally. And we always strive to add value to both and all of our clients. The landlords tend to understand the market better than what the tenants do. I do think some of the experience and the knowledge that we have is crucial to some of the users and tenants that we work with, where the landlords have a stronger baseline understanding and are more in touch with the market than what the tenants are. but we do definitely try to keep a balance between the two, because I think, and we've had situations just in the past year where, you know, we're able to relate different perspective to a landlord of what tenants are thinking, and vice versa.
Understood. Well, Kelly, since again, you and your team had a great 2022, and I think the years leading up to it as well. You're not a first timer in the upper echelon of the brokerage world here. Can you talk about some of the deals, some of your more interesting or just bigger deals that you closed in 2022 or worked on?
Sure. Well, we had a number of build to suit projects that we helped our clients work through the entire process, from identifying the land site, which in a lot of cases, you know, it includes demographic studies, labor studies, utility studies. So I'll name a couple of different build to suits and another development project, which was pretty interesting just because of the process and the assemblage. But we did a build to suit for Atlantic Packaging, which actually is wrapping up construction here kind of as we speak. We have a weekly call that monitors the construction process with the general contractor and the tenant and their design team and their operations team. But that was a 450,000 square foot corrugated production facility, which will also require even more than that. I think it's a $75 million equipment install. So that's a very complex and very unique corrugated project. That building is being built in Elgin right now. Premier Design Build was our general contractor. They've done a phenomenal job. And we had spent probably 12 months exhausting the market from Southeast Wisconsin down to Joliet to try to identify either an existing building or a land site that would accommodate building this project. You know, they had certain labor thresholds in terms of the market and the demographics to ensure that we could staff the facility. Proximity to an existing location was also taken into consideration. But that was certainly probably one of the most complex projects that we worked on. I would say the Clyde's Donuts project was probably equally complex. It was not as large in size. It was 150,000 square feet roughly. That building was very interesting because the process, which predated the construction, actually was pretty complex. The company had just celebrated their 100th anniversary, and as part of that was exploring the proper location to make a significant investment in building a second production plant. So, you know, we looked basically in all of the major markets east of the Mississippi River, and reported back to the ownership, and had actually created a model that had calculated the cost to operate this new plant in 15 different locations. You know, we had spent a lot of time asking our client, you know, what the different positions are that were required to operate this new plant. I think it was 50 or 55 different positions. So as you can imagine, you know, thousands of pages of research, you know, multiple hours of conversations with economic development officials, confirming the hourly labor rates for these various positions, and then creating a financial model to roll all of that together. And on top of that, we're layering in real estate tax assumptions, utility cost assumptions, incentive availability and incentive programs, which were available in certain locations. A key consideration in that case actually was the water, not just the source of the water, but the quality of the water. They had a pretty heavy water. Water is a significant input in their product. So to ensure that they had a comparable product to what they have here was very important. And it's one of the things that I think is understated about the Chicago area. We get a lot of flack for the state of the state and the state of finances in Chicago and Cook County and everything that goes along with it. But one of the great resources we do have that I think is understated is Lake Michigan, and that is a water source, and that came to be a key consideration in that transaction.
That makes sense. The water, especially as an ingredient too. If they are in fact making donuts, is that correct?
They are. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a key ingredient, obviously, because it's water and dough. A few other things called sugar, I think. But what's surprising what you said, Kelly, this is maybe common knowledge to other brokers, but you actually have to do the work of discovering what the hourly wages are in a local community. That surprises me that falls on the responsibility of the brokerage team, but I guess it does if you're talking about site selection.
Yeah, and I think we always look at our role as, because our niche we feel is, the middle market. A lot of our clients are larger, very successful, privately held companies. But they're also the type of companies which likely do not have a director of real estate, which a lot of publicly traded companies do. So we try to assume the role of an outsourced, VP of real estate or director of real estate or whatever you want to call the title. And, that's the type of function that I would imagine that type of person, who has an expertise in real estate would fill. And, I think that's the type of value we try to bring to our clients, an understanding of business and an understanding of real estate that gives them the ability to make the prudent decisions, the analysis that's needed to ensure that they are making indeed the best possible decisions.
Well, again, that's kudos to you and your team for the thoroughness, and it's why you're good at what you do. And it's a good message, I'd imagine, when you're pitching new work, when you describe your process and how relatively seamless and I'm reluctant to use the word easy you make it for the client, because it's still work and it's hard, but it seems like you do go the extra mile to benefit your client. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We do try to make it an enjoyable process for them to the extent that that's possible. It's not easy. It's a lot of hours, but we want to try to make it as easy for them as as possible as that may be. And inevitably, everybody learns something along the way, but we have experiences, and we can point to projects where we have approached certain situations and certain analysis in a certain way that I think is allows us to be unique in our service that we offer.
Well, and you just used the word service. You are in the service business, so the higher quality and caliber of the details that you deliver is what matters in the end. Jumping into the state of the market, one of the things I've heard on some other industrial calls that I listen in on with NAI Global is that there's a pause in some the big box million square foot stuff. Are you seeing that in the Chicago market? Because of the interest rate rises and other factors, or are you still seeing some pretty large spec projects coming, starting or getting going?
So I believe we've got close to 37 million square feet of spec development that's in process today, that will deliver. There will certainly be a much lower level and less square footage of new development starts in 2023 as compared to 22 and 21 for sure, and that's definitely attributed to the interest rate situation and the cap rates in the investment markets. I'll actually touch on, I had touched on two transactions, but I'll point to a third that we just completed in December of 2022 that I think was unique, but also illustrates kind of where the market is. We had assembled 7 acres in Itasca, and when we had secured the final parcel, that was the 6th of 6 homes that we needed to get annexed into Itasca and rezoned. But when we started the process, I want to say it had its initial stages in 2018. Pricing for the land was probably in the mid-teens to upper teens per square foot. We saw pricing increase up to closer to toward $40 a square foot, and we just closed at about $32 a square foot. And then in that process, when we started, we probably had a targeted audience of close to 40 developers, and really when it came down to it, I think there were 6 or 7 that were serious and that were in a position where they could actually close and execute on the development. That land was acquired by and will be developed by High Street Logistic Properties, who's been a great client of our firm, and myself personally. They've closed such as this deal in a time where a lot of developers are having issues securing the capital that they need, and a lot of lenders are not lending, period, much less the fact that if they were, they would be in the 6 to 7% interest rate range, as opposed to in the 3s and 4s for the past 24 months. Mm-hmm. But High Street closed this transaction, and they bought a building from us. They closed March 23rd of 2020, in the darkest of days of COVID, when the banks were closed, county recorders' offices were closed, but they found a way to get that deal done, and also this most recent one. But there's definitely a pullback in terms of development. Rents are still increasing and maintaining at minimum, but it's really a matter of the capital and the debt markets at this point in time.
Yep, that's affecting everything that's been said. It'll be interesting to see what kind of transactional volume we see in the next 6 months, but I do think we've heard plenty that the state of development is being paused a little bit based on those interest rates, and lenders saying, thanks, we're going to take a pass on this one for now. So going back to you, Kelly, as a top producer, we started the show making a reference to your success. What's your secret sauce? You've talked a little bit about your success as in determination, your athletic background, but what gives you this drive for excellence, and kind of how do you do it?
I think there's probably a couple of different factors or characteristics that come together. I first and foremost, my personality, I do like to help people. I like to make people happy. That translates a lot of times into helping them make money. And I've got some skills and background that allow me to do that, I think, better than most. But I do like to make people happy. I'm very competitive. I like to make friends. As a broker, from a broker standpoint, it's a very competitive market. There's a lot of good brokers and a lot of good competitors, many of whom I'm friends with. But at the end of the day, like, we're all, in one sense, a commodity, and we're all replaceable. So I do try to ensure that myself and my team, we do try to make, give our clients the highest levels of service, that means that, the quality of the information that we give them, but also, just simple things, in terms of returning calls and being timely and getting people the information and the answers that they need. Because, the reality is, if I don't, or if someone doesn't, somebody else will. It doesn't take long, I think, to be replaced. And, that's where relationships come into play, to help retain those clients and ensure that they're strong relationships. But, I think you always have to, before you get something, you should be prepared to give something. And we try to give our time and give the best that we have to strengthen those relationships.
I like that. Before you expect to get something, be prepared to give something. That of course is so true, and it's a fundamental. But again, using the sports metaphor, we did a lot of fundamentals growing up, didn't we? It's like, we're going to do this drill again, really?
Yeah, I'm probably overly obsessed with some of the simple, more basic concepts, but you have to do them. This is, especially early on, it's a numbers game. So, if you're not taking the time to do what you need to do, again, your competition is. So I really, I try to ensure that our guys understand that it's, just because you had a good year, or, whatever you've done in the past, doesn't necessarily mean that, that is what the future will hold. So, you've got to, I think, take your experiences and learn from them, but, maintain that work ethic and the drive to be the best that you can be, and do the little things. It's like shooting free throws, and, in basketball, it's just, the only way to become a great free throw shooter is to shoot a lot of shots and get a lot of practice.
Yeah, practice is sometimes everything. Well, that's well said. And before we close, and we are going to wrap up, I always like to ask this, because I'm a personal advocate, and I've worked with the SIOR Foundation toward career development with younger people to get them interested in careers in real estate. What would you tell a young teammate, like when Mike or your other fellow came on board, what to expect in terms of their career? And then if you were to meet a high school senior, a young woman or a young man, what would you tell them about careers in commercial real estate?
I think it's a great industry, and, if you hopefully you can network a little bit and maybe meet some people within the industry, figure out what you think you might want to do, and then finding a good mentor, or partner is very important. If you're fortunate enough to be hired by, someone who becomes a mentor, don't take that for granted. And I think the more you can do to help them, if they're a good mentor, they will also be giving back to you, to help ensure your development. So I guess if you can hitch your wagon to a good horse, that a lot of times is as important as what company you're with. But it's, no matter where you go or what you do, nothing good worth having is not does not come without hard work. So I think be prepared to put in, the hours and develop a relationship with somebody that can hopefully help you develop your career.
I like that. We all started out one way or the other in similar positions, I think. So, well, Kelly Disser the third, I should say you're the third of the Kelly Dissers. So thank you for speaking with us on the House Biz podcast. I wish you a happy 2023 and another successful year. Thanks again for your time today.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.